Hi everyone, I'm Jagdish. I have 12 plus years of experience across healthcare and pharmacovigilance, and I have worked in Agile, Scrum, and project delivery environments. Let's take our metro automation project and look at one question every project manager eventually has to answer. How much will this project cost? Today, we will move from estimating the project to creating the project budget, establishing the cost baseline, and then using actuals and forecast to make better decisions. The key idea is simple. A project budget is not just a number, it is a financial plan that supports delivery. Let's start with our today's session, that is project budgeting, and also talk about our example of Medra automation. Now coming to the next slide, that for our Medra automation project, imagine we have already understood the scope and delivery approach. Now we need to translate that work into money. That means asking, what resources do we need? How long will they be needed? What technology or vendor support is required? And what other project cost should we consider? The output is realistic financial plan that we can use throughout the delivery. And that gives us the starting point for the project budget management. Before calculating the number, let's understand what a project budget actually contains. Here is the budgeting journey for our metro automation project. First is estimate, that is work, effort, rates. Aggregate, roll costs into work packages. Review, challenge assumptions. Approve, confirm funding. Baseline, approved time phased cost plan. And then forecast as reality changes. Notice that budgeting does not stop when we calculate the total. The approved baseline becomes the financial reference for managing the project. So the journey is estimate the work, build the cost, validate it, get approval, baseline it, and then keep learning from actual performance. Let's define the budget before we build one. What exactly is a project budget? For the metro automation project, the project budget is the financial plan required to deliver the approved scope. It should reflect the people, technology, vendors, and other direct costs needed to deliver the outcome. It also needs to reflect the assumption behind the estimate. An estimate is our current view of what project may cost. An approved budget is the authorized financial plan, and the cost baseline is the approved reference we use for control. Now, let's break the metro automation budget into its major cost components. For metro automation, I would typ- typically think about five cost areas. One, people, that is, internal team, contractors, specialist, project manager, analyst, developers, testers, SMEs, and other required resources. Two, technology, tools, licenses, environments, or infrastructure. Three, vendors, external services, consulting, specialist support, or implementation support. Four, other direct costs like training or project specific expenses. Five, approved reserve or where applicable or contingency. The important point is not the category names. It is being able to connect each major cost to the work and assumption behind it. Once we identify the cost components, we can build the estimate. Let's build the Medra automation budget step by step. 1. Estimate the support effort into rate by unit cost. 2. Aggregate. Aggregate is the individual estimates work packages by cost categories. 3. Review, that is challenge assumptions, dependencies and resource capacity. 4. Uh, Obtain the required approval, funding authorization. 5. And establish the approved cost baseline. An estimate can change as we learn more, but once the budget is approved and baselined, it becomes our financial reference for project control. Interview queue. If someone asks me how I build project budget, I explain the assumptions and approval process, not just the final statement. Let's put some simple numbers around Medra automation. Simple project budget example. Imagine Medra automation needs five people for a 6 months. Assume an average cost of 1.2 lakh per person per month. That gives us 36 lakhs for the team. Now add 8 lakh for the technology and vendor support and 3 lakh for direct cost like training, travel and other miscellaneous. That gives an estimated cost of 47 lakhs. Suppose the approved budget becomes 50 lakh after appropriate approved reserve. These numbers are illustrative. The important part is that I can explain where the 50 lakh came from. In an interview, I would explain the resource assumptions, duration, rates, vendor costs, and other assumptions behind the number. Once the budget is approved, we need a reference point to manage it. Next one is that reference point is the cost baseline. For our metro automation, imagine our approved time-phased budget is 50 lakh as per previous slide. This tells us not only the total approved cost, but when we expect that cost to occur, then we have actual cost, what we have actually spent, and forecast what we now expect the project to cost at completion. Baseline, actual, and forecast. Those three views help me understand the financial health. Now, let's make the difference between these three very simple. Think of three words. One, planned, two, actual, and forecast. Planned is what we expected to spend. Two, actual is what we have spent. Three, forecast is what we now expect to spend by the end. For example, suppose Metro Automation planned to spend 20 lakh by this point, but actual spending is 22 lakh. That is 2 lakh variance. But I should not stop at reporting the 2 lakh. I need to understand why it happened and whether it will continue. Maybe the vendor effort increased, maybe rework increased, maybe resource assumptions changed. That takes us to cost variance and decision making. For our Medra automation, suppose actual cost is higher than planned cost. The first question is why? Was the original estimate inaccurate? Did rework increase? Did vendor effort increase? Did scope change? Did the dependency create additional work? Next, what is the impact? Will this affect the remaining budget? Will it affect schedule or resources? Then I look at options. Can we reduce rework? Can we resequence the work? Can we use existing capacity? Does the change require governance? Finally, decide at and forecast. Variance is useful only when it leads to understanding the and action. Now let's connect that thinking to performance measures used in project control. In Metro automation, suppose our time-phased baseline represents the budgeted value of the planned work. That gives us the foundation for planned value or PV. And value represents the budgeted value of work actually completed. Actual cost, AC, is what we actually spent. So the mental model is very simple. PV equals planned work, EV equals completed work. AC equals money spent. The important point for a project manager is not memorizing the abbreviation. It is understanding what the numbers are telling us and what decision may be needed. Once we understand current performance, we can look forward. Monitoring current cost tells me where Medra automation is today. Forecasting tells me where the project is likely to finish. ETC is the expected remaining cost. EAC is the expected total cost at completion. For example, if the project has already spent more than planned and remaining work is also trending higher, the final forecast may exceed the approved baseline. That gives me an early signal. It allows me to discuss options before the project reaches the end, and forecasts are only as good as assumptions behind them. For our Medra automation, our budget depends on assumptions, resource availability, rates, project duration, vendor effort, and dependency. Now imagine one key assumption changes. For example, a specialist is unavailable and we need additional vendor support. That can affect cost. It also may affect schedule, resource, and risk. So, I do not simply change the budget number. I assess the impact, update the forecast, and follow the appropriate governance process. This becomes especially important when scope is requested. Imagine a stakeholder asks for additional functionality in a Medra automation. My first response is not actually yes or no. I assess the impact on scope, schedule, cost, resources, quality, and risk. Then the appropriate governance process determines whether the change is approved, rejected, or deferred. If approved, the relevant financial plan and forecasts are updated. The key principle is do not silently add cost to the project baseline. Make the impact visible, get the right decision, then update the plan. Now, let's bring this into a project manager's regular operating rhythm. For metro automation, I would make a budget health part of regular project health decision. First, review actuals, commitments, and forecast. Second, variance. Review the meaningful variances. Third, stakeholder story. Understand the reason and impact. Fourth, review the forecast. And fifth, agree actions and owners. And finally, communicate the story clearly to stakeholders. I don't want stakeholders to see only a number. I want them to understand what happened, why, what does it mean, what are our options, what decision do we need. That same story structure is very useful in interviews. If an interviewer asks, how do you manage a project budgeting? Don't simply define a budget. Tell a story from a real project. For our metro automation, I could structure my answer like this: situation. What was the project and outcome? Estimate. How did we estimate the cost? Assumptions. What drove the estimate? Baseline. What was approved? Variance. What changed? Action. What you did. Result. What happened? Learning. What you learned. What did I learn? That shows the judgment and ownership, not just knowledge of a tool. Now, let's put you in the manager's seat. Imagine you have a 6 weeks into a metro automation. The approved baseline is 50 lakh. Vendor effort is increasing. Rework is higher than planned, and additional stakeholders request additional functionality request. What do you do first? Don't immediately change the budget. First, review actual cost and remaining work. Identify the reason for the variance. Assess the impact. Check the impact of the requested functionality. Use change control if required. Then present the impact, options, and recommendation. Pause this video and answer this scenario in your own words. Now, let's bring project budgeting into one simple flow. Estimate. First one is estimate. Understand the work and cost. Review, challenge assumptions. Approve, secure the required funding. Baseline, set the reference, establish financial reference. Monitor, track actual performances. Forecast, look forward or look ahead. Control, act on variance. Change, update through governance. The biggest lesson is this: budgeting is not about predicting every rupee or a dollar perfectly. Budgeting it is about creating a realistic financial plan and using current information to make better decisions. Now, let's turn that into one strong interview takeaway. If you remember only one thing from this video, remember this: a project manager does not just manage the budget. A project manager understands the financial story. What did we estimate? What did we approve? What have we actually spent? Why is there a variance? Where are we likely to finish? And what decision do we need to make? Take one real project from your career and identify one project assumption, one variance, and one action and one result. That can become a powerful interview story. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video. Let's place project budgeting into our overall project journey. Planning gives us the delivery approach. Execution gives us turns the plan into work action. Monitoring and control tells us whether reality is moving away from the plan, and budget gives us the financial plan and cost baseline. We need to understand the cost side of reality. So the project story becomes plan it, execute it, understand the cost, monitor the reality, forecast where you will finish, and take actions early. That is the mindset I want to carry into the next stage of the series. Thanks for watching.